to the Cupertino City Council Candidates Forum. This forum is sponsored by the AAUW and the League of Women Voters of Cupertino and Sunnyvale. I'm Elaine Manley from the League of Women Voters, and I will be the moderator this evening. I would like to mention that the League is a nonpartisan organization, and therefore we do not support or oppose political candidates or organizations, or parties, excuse me. Our membership is open to anyone who is a citizen and is of voting age. Our purpose is to encourage participation in our government by informed citizens, and I would like to remind everyone to please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 4th. Now let's introduce the candidates. Tonight we have Don Burnett, Andrea Harris, Stephen Haze, Sandy James, and John Statton. Great. This evening the candidates have agreed to a set of ground rules. Briefly, they cannot have a substitute, and we see they are all here, so that's going along well. They must abide by the time limits, and all of their literature is out the door there in the hallway, so please be sure to pick up their literature before you leave. Our timekeeper is going to be Pat Levette. She'll let each of the candidates know how much time you have left and when your time is up. Once again, please abide by the time limits. We appreciate your cooperation. Now, the format this evening is for an opening statement of 2 minutes each by each candidate. Then we're going to take a 5-minute break so that you may write down your questions. League members have cards for you to write things down on, so if you could please be sure to only put one question per card. You can have as many cards as you like. And please write legibly so I can read it. And please speak to the issues so that we can hear from all of the candidates. All right, will the question collectors please raise their hands? Great, thank you. All right, so after the break, I'll read the questions, and each candidate will have a minute and a half to answer the questions. At approximately 8:25 p.m., we will have the candidates give a 1-minute closing statement. So we're going to begin with opening statements. We've drawn names, and you'll have 2 minutes, and we're going to start with Andrea Harris.
Many of you know me as the chair of the Planning Commission, where I've served for 4 years. And I'll tell you that for the first 3 years, all the comments from residents that I've gotten was positive. They loved the town, they loved the buildings, and keep up the good work was what I heard. This year, however, it's different, and my phone and my mail and people coming to the commission have had a different story. And they had some complaints now about building heights and building setbacks, encroachment on their privacy, on traffic, and on the fact that many of our retail businesses are leaving town. So people said, what are you going to do about it? Well, I wasn't going to do anything about it. I was very happy on the Planning Commission. It's good work. I was reappointed for another 4 years, and I was happy to continue in that vein. But I realized that if I was to respond to some of these issues, I needed to be on the council, because it's at that level that the general plan gets changed. And if we needed to deal with issues like building heights and setbacks and floor area ratios, if we needed to hire a consultant to help us with our retail business, if we needed to deal with a $31 million surplus in a way that the residents wanted, I needed to be in that position. And so I came forward, and I'm here tonight to ask for people's support. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Haze?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the League for having this forum for the candidates. As I mentioned to Elaine, I had the privilege and honor to moderate a candidates forum in the town of Los Altos Hills a few years ago. A lot of you know me as a friend, a neighbor, a neighborhood activist, and also as a community leader. My wife and I, Diane, have lived in Cupertino for 19 years, and when people ask, why do I run? And the reason why I run is very simply because I care. I care about my friends, I care about my neighbors, I care most of all about our community. I have been a candidate previously, and there have been occasions where I've stood fast on the issues. Last time I ran, we talked about growth, we talked about the tier program, and I said that we need to review it. At that time, I was told I was bad for business. But for those for those of you who know me, not just as a person who rides a horse, as the local paper illustrates, but as a person who is a senior business executive for a global information technology corporation, has paid a pretty good salary. What I try to do is to take my experience, my skills, and give it back to the community. So I hope this evening I'll be able to share with you a little bit more of who I am, what I have done, and most importantly, what I would like to do if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. John Statton?
Good evening. I'm John Statton, and I appreciate your willing to come out tonight on an evening that you've got a lot of other things you could be doing. There's 5 reasons why I'm running. The first is because we have a growth and a traffic problem in our town. It's something we've been talking about as a community for quite a while. In the past, we've really focused on office and R&D growth, and we've put a real good strong limit on that in the last 4 years. And I think Don has led the fight on the tier system and has been able to take that off. But we also need to pay attention to residential growth. And we've approved about 1.2 million square feet of residential growth in town, and it's really time that we look at controlling that kind of growth as well. I also want to look at what's happening with the surplus that we're building up. We're on the way of creating a $31 million surplus, and I'd like to see that actually used for civic purposes, such as the library improvement or also the senior center expansion. And in turn, if you're not going to use a surplus in government, I think at that point you should be thinking about giving it back to the voters. The environment's also something that concerns me. I'd like to see the hillside preservation ordinance that we have in place kept in place, and also us working with other cities in the West Valley so that we can work together to preserve hillsides. And finally, I'd also like to, well, next to finally, I'd like to look at economic development. We have a mall that is on its last leg, so to speak, within Valco, and yet if we can revitalize Valco, we in turn will make sure that we have a healthy sales tax coming into the city, and so we in turn don't have to pay higher taxes and fees ourselves. And finally, last but very much not least, is our neighborhoods. We in turn have neighborhoods that are really the strength of Cupertino. And one of the things I think we need to look at is how in turn you get neighbors working with each other so that we in turn work together as a community rather than apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Burnett?
Thank you. I also appreciate everyone showing up tonight. It's nice to have a good turnout. I'm going to start with very basic political philosophy because I kind of formulated it during the 4 years I've been in office. I started out primarily concerned from watching council meetings and not feeling that the overall needs of the community were being met. And as I've been on the council for 4 years, my philosophy is actually simplified. I'm not anti-government. Government's what gives us our civilization. And really, when you get down to it, the only function government has legitimately is to make people's lives better. And I found that when I apply that standard, a lot of very difficult sounding issues sort themselves out quite easily. And make people's lives better, we can do things to improve the health of the community. We can fight things like attempts to have tire burning. We need to investigate that and see what it is, what the effect is on the community. For safety, I think we need to take a very strong look at the way we're organizing and running our roads. We have traffic problems, we have dangerous situations in the streets, and I think there are things we can do about a lot of these. We need to look at things like photographic enforcement of red light running. We need to look at things like traffic calming in our neighborhood. The happiness of the community, another important factor, and we do this by providing good government is one thing, and recreation facilities are another. We have a wide diversity of recreational facilities that we've provided in the community, and we like to keep building on that. I think government does need to be fair and consistent. Financially, I'm a conservative person. The fundamental law of spending money is once you spend $1, it's gone. You don't have it for anything else, and I think it needs to be spent very, very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy James?
Good evening. As I look out here this evening, and those of you who are at home also, I realize I know most of you because I've worked for you for the last 8 years. You elected me in 1989 and again in 1993 to represent you on the Cupertino Union School District Board of Education. And on that board, we hired 2 superintendents. We cut $3 million out of our general fund when times were poor. And many of you worked side by side with me when I chaired Measure A to raise $71 million to renovate our 23 schools. Why am I looking to run for city council now? At many of your urging, it's because I am concerned with many of the things that my fellow candidates are, and I do believe that the skills I brought to the school district and the new partnerships, the ability to interact with our legislators, with 6 municipalities, because we have schools in 6 cities, to manage a $100 million budget at one time, 1,200 employees, transfers very readily into municipal government. You've come to know me as someone who works very hard, who listens to all sides of an issue, who does not have a bias in any one direction, but will always try to come to a consensus working with a group. I think one of the hardest things to do as a council member or board coming from private industry, and I have my own business, is to learn that you don't make all the decisions on your own any longer. There's 5 of you that together make decisions that's going to affect everyone that lives in this city. So while I sit on the council or I sit on the board, I don't represent myself, I represent all of you that live in this city. And I have heard also the concerns about the monster homes on small lots, about traffic, about the environment. Many of those issues are regional, and I believe as someone who already has forged partnerships, experiences with both city government and regional government, that I can immediately be effective as a city council member to help represent Cupertino solve those regional and local issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, give you a chance to write your questions on the cards, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes and start asking the questions for the candidates. Okay. So these questions are all addressed to all of the candidates, and what we're going to do is go one by one, and I'm just going to start. Don, you'll be first to answer this first question. We'll rotate through, and then Andrea, you'll get the chance to answer the next question first, and so on, so that each of you get a chance to answer first, if that's the opportunity. Okay? So you ready for the first question?
All right.
Great, here we go. The test burn of tires, I'm hoping I'm reading this right. The test burn of tires at Kaiser Cement showed an increase in emissions of cancer-causing toxics, particulates, and heavy metals such as mercury and lead. What is your position on tire burning, and what steps would you take to prevent it?
Thank you. Spent a lot of time on that issue. I wrote a letter to Kaiser early this year saying that nothing should be done up there that would be detrimental to the health of the citizens of Cupertino. As a result of that, Kaiser responded. We had a committee working on it. The facts that were mentioned there were brought out. The committee concluded that there was no way that we could establish, based on the evidence that was available to us, that tire burning was not harmful. The harmful effects that were mentioned were there. There were some pollutants that actually went down. So there was, unfortunately, there was no way to make a trade-off so we could get a final answer that was definitive in terms of how much we gained by reducing sulfur dioxide as opposed to how much we lost for the others. But the conclusion was pretty clear, and my own position right now is that I don't think we should burn tires in this facility. It's too close to a populated area, and there are just too many uncertainties involved in burning tires.
Thank you. Andrea Harris?
I'm opposed to tire burning at Kaiser and in general. For Kaiser, it's an economic issue. They can save a good deal of money if they burn tires, but I don't feel it's worth the potential risk to us of breathing that and finding out later that there are problems as a result. We have a watchdog agency in our community called West Valley Citizens Air Watch. They're really on top of this issue. They go to Sacramento, they write letters to people, and they're fully knowledgeable of this subject, and we're lucky to have them. I think that there are many, many ways to recycle tires. They can be made into roadway surfaces, which in fact are a real benefit, because when our tires ride on those roadways, they last longer. Also, they're quieter, so road noise is less. Those are real benefits, so that I'm not opposed to recycling tires. What I heard is that at some of these places where they burn tires, they actually bring the tires in from other countries. It's not even California's tires that we're thinking about burning. So I do oppose that here, and I think we should find other uses to recycle.
Thank you. Stephen Haze?
Philosophically and scientifically, I'm opposed to the burning of the tire derivatives. As Andrea indicated, that there is a sort of play on words, a lower use for the component. I had the opportunity to meet with the Air Watch, and at that time they were able to demonstrate to me clearly that it was faulty science and data collection. There was only one single ground collection point in which then the assumption was derived as far as how the exhaust dissipated throughout Santa Clara Valley. Also, it touched just below the threshold. I believe it's 10 incidents per million, and this was like 9.6. And I saw this on a prior occasion before the opening of Highway 85, in which the noise level was studied, and it was expected to be below the CEQA level of 60 decibels. And as we found out, we now have neighborhoods where they're very concerned about the noise, and now we're trying to go back and rectify it. So my feeling is Kaiser can go to Sacramento and try to lobby, but when they come back, the problem's still here. And until they can fix the data, and they can try economics as justification, but if the data is faulty, then we don't go.
Thank you. Sandy James?
I think this is a very good example of a partnership between a regional air quality control issue and a local group, some of whom are sitting here this evening, that took it upon themselves to become very knowledgeable and bring it to the attention not only of seated elected officials, but those of us who were candidates, and brought enough pressure that they enabled people to take a second and a third and a fourth look. Certainly, this is a regional issue, so you could ask how much effect a city council member can have. Well, they can have a profound effect, because if they are willing to speak out, if they're willing to take a stand, and if they're willing to sit on regional boards, then they can affect what happens in their community, even if it doesn't fall under city auspices. So I think this is a really good example of how people working together help the community. My advice to Kaiser would be, recycling tires is a very good environmental issue. This is not the right place to do it. You're profitable here. Take it somewhere else, which is not in a suburban area, where it makes more sense, where they'd be happy to have you. So I'm certainly opposed to it here. I'm real pleased with the process as it's gone, and I think it's just another example of how the community works together with good leadership to make things happen that don't necessarily fall under the auspices of their role to begin with.
Thank you. John Statton?
I had an opportunity to meet the Citizens Air Watch. They're a very active group, and I think they've added a real positive element to the discussion on this whole issue so far. And one of the issues that's been raised is really what's the benefit for Cupertino to have tire burning up there? And really nobody's come forward and said there is any benefit to us as a community. Instead, there's just potential downside and risk. And if that's the case, then why are we engaged in that as a community, or why would we ever support that as a town? One of the things I think that you also have to look at is that this is not just a local issue, but now this is going to be a statewide issue, and this issue is now going to be taken into Sacramento. And as a community, we need to then be active in Sacramento as well. And so this is something I think our city council and our city needs to be continually vigilant about and continue to discuss. And in the future, this is, again, as many people have pointed out, it's been kind of a model for how people in local communities can have a real strong impact upon our lives in a real positive way.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Andrea. Do you have a plan of action for mitigating and improving the traffic flow within our city, both in the business sections, De Anza Boulevard, and the residential areas, in particular near and around our schools?
Well, yes, actually, I do. I think that in terms of the business areas, one of the things that we did this year as Planning Commission was change the general plan, or send to the council the request to change the general plan to look at morning peak hour traffic when we approve developments. This was never done before. We only looked at afternoon peak hour traffic. So the effect on the city of developments in the morning weren't even considered. So that's one step we've taken in business areas. Another thing we can do in business areas is work with the businesses to stagger their starting times. That hasn't been done. To encourage them to have van pooling, to encourage telecommuting. Those kinds of things need to be done from the city. They don't happen by accident. We need to bring together the major employers in town and work on those issues. The stores open at a different time, And that's not the problem. The problem is rush hour. In the residential areas, people take their children to school. They take their children to school because there's no busing. And I was thinking about that today. I think what we need to do there is encourage the high school students and the junior high students to bike to school, and then set up carpools, have meetings with the PTAs to work on morning carpools for the younger children. So that instead of 6 cars going to the elementary school, there's 1 car. And it's totally sensible, and the people get to know each other better. So that's my thinking on that.
Thank you. Stephen Haze?
Unfortunately, Cupertino is affected by what's a regional issue. With the advent of light rail, possibly that's going to relieve some of the traffic. But if we look at how can we control or mitigate for traffic in Cupertino, that's where we get into jobs and housing, okay, and the imbalance. And so, there's questions about, are we building too much housing close to our employment centers? And my feeling is if you have within close proximity housing opportunities for the workforce, that is going to mitigate it. But at the same time, you have to have a good infrastructure as it relates to public transit. I actually have a photograph of a woman sitting at a bus stop where there's no place to sit, and she's been waiting for 30 minutes for a bus. I don't see how you can get anybody out of a car if that's how they're going to spend their time. It would take me an hour and 43 minutes to go from Cupertino to Milpitas if I took public transit. I can do that in a car in 20 minutes. And I guess I'm kind of old-fashioned. I remember riding my bike to school. I don't know what's changed in the last few years since I rode that bike, but if 10% of the children can make it on their own, I put that as the challenge for the other 90%.
Thank you. Sandy James?
Yes, I think it's a very complex problem, and again, as Stephen said, it's a regional issue. Once again, we're talking about, we don't live in a vacuum in Cupertino. We are part of a community. We're part of this region. And the transportation and the traffic is a regional issue that we have to have strong people on regional boards to and I don't think we have that right now, to voice our concerns and to help with traffic that comes through Cupertino, because the traffic here isn't just the people that live here, it's the people that come through here. That go from here to someplace else. Is when our retail business is poor, as it is now, and they're leaving us, we're all getting in our cars and we're driving somewhere else to spend our tax dollars, and then we're coming back. And so we're using all the infrastructure, but we're not supporting the tax base to pay for better infrastructure. I think that carpooling and bicycling and walking is something that really we have to spend more time on. And one of the reasons that people drive their children to school, and that's changed so much, is that there's 2 people working now, and it's just so easy for them to drop their children off on the way to work or on the way home, that it's really hard to get them out of that habit. We've worked and worked and worked with our schools to do that. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I think that we need to forge partnerships with business and the schools and the community to do a lot of educating and to try to help everybody learn what is the good and what is the downfall of everybody driving constantly their cars wherever they're going. It's a complex, but I think it's something we can work on together, and certainly we can mitigate it. Much better than we're doing now.
Thank you. John Statton?
On the business side of things, I think there's several things that we could do. One of them is, a few years ago, a term traffic demand management or transit demand management was in vogue, and companies locally used to have transit demand management coordinators within them, and most of the large ones still do. Those coordinators at one time used to meet with city officials and sit down and talk about how they in turn could help regulate the flow of their people in and out of the community to really have the least impact possible. And I'd like to see those meetings started up again. Another thing that's happening right now is there's a shuttle between the Caltrain station that Tandem and HP share the cost for running, but there's no shuttle that's in turn running to cover Apple, Symantec, NetManage, and the other large companies along Banley Drive in that part of town. So I'd like to see those companies get together and put together a shuttle that in turn could help them move their employees from regional transit in and out of our community. When you talk about shuttles and busing and things along that line, one of the exciting things that we have as a resource locally is the whole PG&E natural gas refueling station. It's the only refueling station in the entire South Bay. It's one of the few in the Bay Area. And if you look over what's happening in Sacramento, they're running buses on natural gas. In schools, I'd look at carpooling. I'd look at staggered start times for schools. I'd look at teaching bicycling. before I looked at actually instituting busing. But I think that's one thing that I've heard from neighbors and parents is schools are in turn impacting neighborhoods quite a lot. And you just can't get past a lot of clogged schools these days, and it's something we as a town really need to step up to the plate and swing at.
Thank you. Don Burnett?
Thank you. Yes, a lot of the issues have been covered quite well so far. I'd like to add a little bit. The traffic demand program has had some success. There's a program that Apple has that's called Cash Out that is a very innovative and interesting kind of a thing to do. If you don't drive your car to Apple, you get $1.50 a day back. And this simple device is proven very effective in a lot of places for reducing the traffic. With respect to our main arterials, we have been looking in the city at the prospect of photographic coverage of people who run red lights for some time. And the only reason that it hasn't been enacted is that it has to be made to work somewhere within the legal system, and that still hasn't happened anywhere. People have put in the systems, but they haven't been able to make them function, and I'm hoping that we can keep pressure on and initiate more action locally to try and do that, because I think photographic coverage is very good. With the schools, kids want to get to school on their own, and I think we need to provide training for them to do that. And I think we need to do some street redesign in neighborhoods around schools to calm down the traffic and make that a safer situation.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Stephen. Do you have any plans for addressing the concerns of some residents about the increased cultural diversity in Cupertino?
The answer is yes. I mean, if there's one thing I've been involved with on a very intimate basis is about what we kind of frame the discussion as cultural diversity. For myself, I'm German, I'm Irish, my great-grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee Indian, and I'm half Assyrian, so I live with it every day. Some of you may not know this, but I attended a peace conference in South Africa, and there they were definitely grappling with a very severe issue. And I have participated in Mexico with what's called Hands Across the Border, and that was a cultural and historical exchange, and that was last year. And then at my church, we deal with it. I serve on the vestry, and we have the Holy Light congregation, and we talk about that. We talk about the melting pot, we talk about going our own ways, and we talk about misunderstandings. So I try to do it in various forms. My involvement with the Hispanic community, my involvement with the Chinese community, and again, my experience in South Africa as well.
Thank you. Sandy James?
Certainly, this is an issue that comes up everywhere I go in the city because we are a very culturally diverse community. We have huge pockets of certainly Asian, as we know, our major group, but we have a large group of Russian and East Indian and Israelis. A very, very nice mix. In our school district, we have 58 languages spoken. Most people don't realize that. And we also do not have bilingual education. We have total English immersion programs, and we've had a lot of success with that. Most of our students are in a regular classroom within 18 months. And so we have been a pilot and kind of a model throughout the nation for that kind of program. I'm on the part of the, as many of the people sitting here today, the program that the city and De Anza College are putting on, the Public Dialogue Consortium, which is addressing and asking people from the community to come in and talk about the issues of multicultural communication and education within our city. It's something that as community leaders and as elected officials we have to role model, we have to take a stand on, and I think the most important thing to do is to admit that it's here, that we need to talk about it, that we need to open it up and make it safe for people to dialogue and be honest about their feelings so we can understand each other and so that we can unify instead of divide into our own little pockets and become the unique community that we are.
Thank you. John Statton?
I thought a lot about what kinds of themes I would have during this campaign, and the theme really that came out from my own point of view is that Cupertino really works together. And the reason why I chose that as a theme was because I think that one of the ways that you get to know people and the way people work with each other is very, very important. I was involved with the first Diversity Summit back in 1995, and I've been involved with the succeeding summits ever since. And I've watched the way people have kind of come together, begun to dialogue with each other, begun to talk, and also begun to work together. A lot of people are very afraid of the other, and I think one of the ways you kind of overcome that fear is to be able to sit down and actually work on projects that you share some commonalities about. And so I think one of the real strong things that our community does is our neighborhood disaster preparedness program, for instance. It's a way of getting neighbors out, meeting with each other, talking with each other, working on a common interest, and that in turn breaks down barriers between people. Neighborhood watch program is another good way that our community can get people working together as well. The 4th of July was a real nice example of this entire community coming together to reinstitute a program that is something I think we can all share. And so again, what I would look for in this way is we need to see our community really trying to come up with ways of getting neighbors to neighbors, meeting each other, talking together, and really working together. Thanks.
Thank you. Don Burnett?
Thank you. Yes, the council has been very proactive in trying to foster appreciation of our diversity as the asset that I truly believe it is. And as some of the other candidates have described, the council and the city staff have put in motion a series of meetings in the community that I think has already resulted in reducing tensions, in eliminating some misunderstandings. And I think we need to continue it. We're planning on continuing it. I think it's been very successful. I think a particular area where we need to work on this is with adolescent youth. I think this is a time in life when children are becoming grown-ups and they're formulating their character, and they're particularly susceptible to racism and racist kinds of thinking at that time. And I'm hoping that we can work to bring our adolescent community, provide better facilities for them than we do now within the city, and get them working together, because working together is exactly right. In our neighborhood, I think we've got a United Nations quorum in our neighborhood. We have an active neighborhood earthquake preparedness, and it's wonderful. All the people get together, you get to know each other, you work together on something, and you're friends. It's great.
Thank you. Andrea Harris?
I have a series of ideas related to this. One of the things that I noted in looking at the various city commissions is that all the different voices in the community are not represented. And if I were on the council, I would work to appoint people from all the different groups. Second of all, the Chamber has started an organization called Leadership Cupertino to train future leaders of Cupertino. And I think we should recruit people from the various groups to attend that and become future leaders and bring their backgrounds. Third, my children went through the schools here, and as far as I could see, they were colorblind. Their friends were all different races, and they didn't think about that. It's the parent generation that thinks about that. And I think when people are different and feel different, they need to be brought together for common purpose. And in this public consortium dialogue put on by the 5 Cs, we talked about ways to do that. We talked about community events to share multiculturalism. We talked about having mentors across race lines. Many people have had experiences such as losing a relative, having an illness, a wayward child, moving to a new area. We might want to talk to someone else like you. And you could find a mentor program. We could set up a mentor program to bring people together that way to help each other. And I think with that kind of an education process, we could work on our diversity issue.
Thank you. Sandy James, we're going to start with the next question with you. Valco was mentioned, but what about the Oaks? 2 very well-liked businesses have left, the bookstore and the main restaurant. What influence does the City Council have on this beautiful center for the future?
You know, I think the Oaks is really a shame. It's very much like Valco. It should be one of our shining centers. And it's a very good example of a center that suffers from out of state, in this case, ownership. The owners don't care about this community. They really aren't seriously concerned about filling that center, about making it a healthy center. It seems as though they're interested in long-term land value. And so I know of many examples where it's very difficult for people to even lease space there. It's a beautiful center right off the freeway across the street from Flint Center, and certainly a clean, well-lighted place. Is a bookstore that people came to love and to spend a lot of time and to find some of the culture of this community. I personally spent a lot of time. I work out at the Oaks, and Hobie's is one of the places that I do a lot of business. So I spent a lot of time there. It's a beautiful center. What do we do as a city? I know that the City Council has been trying to deal with the out-of-state ownership, and so has the Chamber been very active in that case. It's a long-term process, and I don't know that we're going to get too far with them, but I think that we look at different things like trying to make our city favorable and friendly to retail business in general, and do a lot of educating to our community members as to why it makes sense to shop in Cupertino. Not just the slogan, Shop Cupertino, but what does that mean? Why is it important? How can we as a community support our local retail businesses? For instance, doing our business, having our business meetings there, bringing people into the community to keep it healthy. So as a city council member, I think it's something you have to be very proactive about.
Thank you. John Statton?
I'm going to reiterate some of the things Sandy just said, actually, because the Oaks is a very frustrating example of absentee ownership and the fact that they really don't have a strong interest in leasing to people very quickly or very efficiently. I've called their management a number of times, and we've had interesting businesses that wanted to locate there, and it is 6 months or 9 months or a year later before they'll get back to somebody, and by that point they've already moved on to another town and set up shop elsewhere, and we've lost them forever. But Valco is another example of what's going on as well. And we have a real opportunity in Valco in that right now, if the city has been continuing to push the way it has been, we at this point have the opportunity of having a shift in ownership, the Macy's Clearance Center leaving there, and in turn a Dillard's department store moving in. And Valco at this point, 12 months and 18 months from now, could be a real shining star of this valley. We have the economics locally. Our average household income is over $79,000. We have the education. Our average education level is way up there. And people really would prefer to shop locally rather than having to drive down to Valley Fair or up to Stanford. But we need to be offering them the choice locally to be able to do so. Why this is so important to us is because right now our general fund revenue, about 11% of it is coming from our property taxes. About 31% is coming from our sales tax. So we need to really keep attention to the sales tax to make sure that we in turn have a good, healthy local economy.
Thank you. Don Burnett?
Subject's been covered remarkably thoroughly, and I don't have a whole lot to add to that, other than to say that the city has been as proactive, I think, as we could be in trying to do something with the Oaks. The absentee ownership problem is certainly there. There are real limits to what we're able to accomplish as city government. I would surely like to see a change of heart there, and whoever is running it I shed a tear when the clean, well-lighted place for books left. I mean, I love that store. And I like Margarita de Roma, too, which is now gone. And it's just tragic. And I don't know what they're thinking of. So, yes, a quick take on Valco. Yes, I hope that we're able to turn that around. I'm much more optimistic about Valco because I think there's a chance for some positive thinking. I just wish they had started a long time ago and hadn't lost Nordstrom's, and if they'd managed to sell some land to REI so they just stayed, that would have been good too, but they do what they want to do, and there's a real limit to what the city can do in that regard. I think we've done what we can.
Thank you. Andrea Harris?
Yes, I'd like to use the opportunity of this question to talk about retail in general. I feel that the city is not doing all that it can to encourage retail. I've lived here 20 years, and I watched Valley Fair totally decline, and now it's a thriving regional center. The Prune Yard was in terrible shape, and they reconfigured it, and Westgate died, and now it's re-energized. El Paseo was leveled. It's still retail. It wasn't converted to office, and it wasn't converted to industrial. I think the approach in our town is to turn our back on our retail, and I don't think that's good for the residents, because our residents are driving to El Paseo and Westgate. They'd just as soon stay in town. When REI came to the city and said, we need a bigger space, we want to buy our own land, help me find land, there wasn't any. I don't believe there wasn't any. There seems to be plenty of land to build big office buildings and industrial, but not retail, which serves the local residents. So I think that's a problem. When Linda Evans in the Oaks, Linda Evans came to the Oaks, they wanted 3 storefronts, and they were told, no, I'm sorry, you can only have 2 because of the way you'll generate traffic. Now, since then, we've changed our required parking ratios and made them more liberal, and I think that that's good, and we need to take more steps in that direction. We need to be a friend to business, and we need to take on that stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Haze?
I think all the candidates so far have articulated this issue very well. But you know, if you go too far, people say, why is the government getting so involved? You know, there's only so much we can do, and then you have to let market forces take control. It's the marketplace that dictates what types of products and services that people want, okay? And it's always trying to find a balance. Maybe it's my business background. I can be incentivized, but up to a certain point. It takes commitment from the landowner, it takes commitment from the tenant, as well as it takes commitment from the city as far as being certain that we keep Cupertino a place that people want to do business in. That means that your infrastructure should be in place. You talk about streets improvements, clean up potholes. We do have on the books, and it can be dusted off, is the redevelopment agency for such as Valco. We have the Stevens Creek Master Plan, where everybody has gotten involved to say what type of future we want for our community. But I don't know what more we can do outside of say, please come to Cupertino. If only 10% of the residents for 20 years have been shopping at Valco, how are we going to get the rest of them to shop there, even when we did have a Nordstrom's? If we have Stanford and we have Valley Fair, we're essentially caught in this predicament.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we're going to start with John Statton. Most of you have mentioned growth in your ballot statements. Please define the type of growth you support and do not support.
It's a good question. It's also nice to be able to go first for once. I think it's often easier to say what you're against. Let me say what I'm for in this case. I'm really for growth that's going to be able to improve our local economy so that in turn we don't have to pay higher taxes and fees and otherwise. And that primarily means that we have to have good, strong retail growth in our community. We're effectively built out as a town. There's really very little space left in our town. So what we have to really look at is how are you going to improve kind of aging shopping centers and provide people with a reason to shop locally so that in turn those tax dollars can stay here. So when I look at growth, I'm looking at revitalizing existing spaces rather than building new spaces. I'm supporting right now the height limits that the council's been putting into place along Stevens Creek Boulevard. I think one of the messages over the last several elections is that we don't want a large, tall, built-up town. But also I think one of the key things we need to look at is good design. I will defy anybody to point out great examples of architecture in our town. But I'll say it's very easy to point out some of the ones we all dislike. And I'll point the red brick buildings on the corner of Stevens Creek and De Anza's award-winning bad taste. When it comes down to what growth I'm against, I would say that I'm against growth that's in turn going to impact neighborhoods strongly, and that really looks at how much residential we're putting into town. When we're flag lotting every available lot, or we're also in turn putting as much residential in as possible, that has some long-term traffic problems and long-term school problems that we're going to begin to face, and those are issues that concern me.
Thank you. Don Burnett?
Yes, well, my stand, I guess, is somewhat illustrated, as John mentioned, after trying, starting in January of 1994, to get the 2 million plus square foot growth of the tier system out of the general plan. It's out. It's the first time we've ever reduced the total amount of growth allowed in the history of Cupertino. It also makes the general plan a whole lot shorter and a whole lot easier to understand. So I regard that as a really significant move toward getting more control on growth. We still have, there's a lot of bonus growth still left in the general plan. I'm very concerned about what happens on the acreage that is down there on Stevens Creek by Valco. There's 16 acres there, and there's continual pressure to develop high-rise development in there and put high density in there. I intend to resist that as much as I can. We have, according to our state quota, we have 1,500 housing units left to provide. I can't possibly see any reasonable way to do that with the city the way it stands now. Housing is currently an unfunded mandate, as I see it. Our schools can't handle it with the way the state's taken away money. And I think we have to look seriously at what is the right housing element to have in our general plan.
Thank you. Andrea Harris?
Yes, we had a requirement by the state to meet a jobs housing imbalance, and we sent a plan to them to build 2,500 residential units. That's what we needed. We designated 3,500 potential sites, but some of them will take a long time to redevelop. In the first year and a half after doing that, we approved 1,250 dwelling units, or half the plan. I don't think it was ever intended to have that quick growth. And that's why we're getting some of the complaints about height and traffic and distance from the street and school crowding fears. And we still have 800 of those to go, and they were all apartments. 1,050 apartments were approved. About 200 have been built so far. But not really very much for-sale housing, and the for-sale housing that was approved is in the $650,000 to $850,000 range, which isn't particularly accessible. So I would like to see some for-sale housing. Our general plan now in most areas calls for 20 units to the acre, which is too dense, and I think we need to change that. We need to build some $380,000 to $425,000 homes in case we want to trade down or have our children and parents come to town. I believe that we can build some industrial if we lower the heights, and we need to have some land available for retail. And those are my views on that.
Thank you. Stephen Haze?
Well, as a almost 20-year resident of Cupertino, I've seen a lot of changes, and it seems it's perennial. And we're going to go in the third millennium about growth or no growth. And, you know, we fall into a trap if you say, well, I'm for growth or I'm opposed to growth. Growth will occur. The question is it responsible growth? Is it balanced growth? When we talk about jobs, when we talk about housing, when we talk about traffic, when we talk about transportation, you know, it gets very complex, but all of us do know what we do like about Cupertino. And we went from a rural community, we became more suburban, and I think we sort of draw the line and say we don't want it to be urbanized. And I had the privilege to sit on the Goals Committee in 1990, and I thought that was a very good process because you had residents, you had educators, you had businesses, you had government working in partnership. I would like to see for the upcoming general plan review, which is going to be the blueprint for the future, that we continue to try to enhance it and make it a vision for all of us. The Stevens Creek Master Plan is the first step in that. Planting of trees along Stevens Creek instead of high rises. Those are the first steps, but we have a lot further to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy James?
Yes, I agree with a lot of what's been said. There's very little buildable land left in Cupertino, but there are some pieces. There's that tandem property on Tantown, Stevens Creek, which Don Burnett referred to, which I think, since there is such little, small amounts of land left, is going to be very emotional when it comes up to developing that. That's an area, however, where we could look at some more density or some more retail space in order to protect our greenbelt area and our hillsides and keep it out of the hillsides. We may even be able to do some interesting partnership, and I'm very much in favor of partnerships. I come from a history of that, partnering with corporate America and education and business. Whereas maybe we can, in return for working with the property owners on some of the things they want, maybe get a piece of land for a high-tech library or something like that for the city, so that there's some kind of give and take in order to have services that benefit all of the community. I do believe that we've had an awful lot of housing without paying attention to how that affects the infrastructure, and if our retail business isn't good, then we don't have a sales base in order to provide the services that all those people that live in all those houses, are going to need. And so we have to keep a real close look at that, and I'm mainly concerned about the identity of our neighborhoods and building multiple houses or monster houses on what was one lot before, and I think we need to take a look at changing the way that's done, protecting the neighborhoods that all of us have worked so hard to be able to afford and to build into and to live into. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can do as far as growth is concerned. And I don't think it has to be growth, anti-growth, as Stephen said also. It needs to be responsible, it needs to be partnership, it needs to be something we do together, respecting the needs of the community.
Thank you. It's time for closing statements. You each have 1 minute. We did a drawing to see who gets to go first, and Sandy, you win, so we'll hear from Sandy James first.
There's a lot of things people ask you to promise when you're running for office, and I find it very difficult to promise things because you don't know what's going to come before you, and you don't know what the situation's going to be when it comes. But there are some things I can promise you. I can promise you because I've worked for you for 8 years, and I have a public record of which I am very proud and which I've worked very hard. And what I can promise you is that I will always work hard. I will always listen to all sides. I will be open to everyone, and I will try very hard to make the best choice, not just for me, but for the community. The only reason I'm interested in public service is because I've lived in this community for over 30 years. I raised my children here. I'm still here because I love it here, and because I think it's a special place to be. I want to be a part of that. I want to represent you, and I hope when you look at everything, you exercise your right to vote, and you vote for any one of us very good candidates. We're very lucky to have this caliber of candidates in our city who reflect and mirror your concerns and your needs. But most importantly, don't ever give up your responsibility and your right to vote for your community office holders.
Thank you very much. Stephen Haze?
I just want to thank everybody for being here. To me, this is the most important part about campaigning, is to get close to the people. I just feel that my experience over the last 15 years and my professional background in high technology as a business executive is an offering to the community. I currently serve on 5 boards. I've served on 18 organizations, and I would like to just give to my community. I know I'm no more successful than the support I receive from each and every member of our community, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Don Burnett?
Thank you. I guess I'll talk a little bit about my theory of leadership. I kind of reject the old style Superman theory of leadership. I believe that leadership is very much a collaborative thing. We always get our best results, in my experience, wherever I've been, when you can get a group of people working together to solve a problem. Let everybody talk, let everybody have their say. And I've always been impressed with how reasonable and cooperative people are once they've been allowed to have their say, and how much creativity and ingenuity that the people of a community can bring to bear on a problem. And I'd like to keep working with this community for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Harris?
I'd like to give you the reasons why I think you might want to vote for me, and I hope you will vote for me on November 4th. First of all, I'm a moderate. I represent the residents' view, and I represent the needs of the city for a healthy business community. I'm supported by liberals and conservatives, by Democrats and Republicans. I'm the only candidate with planning commission experience, and many of our issues are land use related, and it takes a long time to become familiar with our general plan and with the laws related to that. I have ideas for how to deal with heights and setbacks and view preservation, with traffic problems, with reviving our retail centers and Valco. I also have ideas for how to encourage our businesses to stay in Cupertino and others to come. So for me, it's quality of life issues. It's expanding our library hours and our library and our senior center. And it's forging consensus. And one of the things that I've done on the Planning Commission is forge consensus to bring forward good government.
Thank you. John Statton?
When I started this campaign, I really tried to think about what I wanted to do, and I drew back on my experience. I've worked on various issues in our town for well over 10 years. First, when I started off on our city's Energy Commission in the late 80s, working on energy conservation programs. I've worked in a variety of other aspects with a number of you that are in the room tonight. And I thought I really knew the town. And then I started walking door to door. And I've gone to about 1,500 homes so far, and in each home I've learned something a little bit different. Cupertino really is a very nice city, and it's one of the reasons why we all like living here and we all want to continue to live here. But one of the issues I think that I've found that people view their city really through the lens of their neighborhood and where they live. It's, did my garbage get picked up on time? Is the turn at the end of my street going the right way? Is the neighborhood too crowded right now? Can I get through the schools? Really, people have very very interesting concerns, but they're all really local concerns, and I think that's one of the issues that anybody that represents you needs to be very aware of. I'll pledge that if I'm elected in November, though as I hope I am, that I'll turn and listen, I'll be responsive, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have literature out by the exit, so if you please make sure you take that before you leave. Also, there are a couple of websites that you can look into, www.cupertino.org and www.smartvoter.org. So there's technology there for you. Also, there's copies of the City Channel program schedule available in the hallway. So this concludes the candidates forum for the Cupertino City Council. On behalf of the League, I'd like to extend a special thanks to the candidates for participating in this. I'd like to thank the AAUW for helping with this and my fellow League members for helping make this go smoothly. And also like to thank you for taking the time to come tonight. Please remember to vote Tuesday, November 4th. Thank you and good night.
You've been watching the League of Women Voters City Council Candidates Forum on the City Channel. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes candidates for elective office, but sometimes takes positions on ballot measures. Election Tuesday is November 4th. Please vote for the 3 candidates best suited to serve on Cupertino's City Council. For more information on Cupertino's municipal election, visit the city's website at www.cupertino.org. And keep watching the City Channel, your news source for City Council election programming. Tonight's forum will be replayed on the City Channel at the following dates and times.